Hello, YouTubers. Season's greetings. Happy holidays. Thank you for tuning in and for sharing your curiosity with me today. I just want to stir up two topics for discussion if I can. I want to bring up the topics of forgiveness and trust. Does one necessarily lead to the other? And is there a necessary loss of one in order to achieve the other? Hopefully the discussion may be useful to you when you're prioritizing things in your life. What does it mean to forgive? Does it necessarily mean that you're going to automatically forget? That you're automatically going to return back to step one or stage one? Does it mean automatically things are forgotten, where trust is magically restored? To my way of thinking, not likely. In life, it's mostly about change. And logically, you just don't return back as if nothing has happened when you get betrayed. Usually a lesson is learned each time, an observation usually made, and a question can either arise or it remains. So again, not likely is my answer. More optimistically, it may mean that there's a second chance. Sometimes it's a final chance in order to get things right. Perhaps a second chance to do things more appropriately, because I think we all need to accept that our world is not perfect, and neither are we. We can no more judge anyone piously than we should ourselves, because we're made of the same human materials, the same thinking, the same patterns as anyone else uses. And if we accept that we can make mistakes, then we have to grant that other people can make mistakes, and we have to give them that courtesy to make any kind of transgression or mistake with us. We are not perfect. Now, just because we academically understand why a mistake was made, somebody had trouble in their life, or this led to that, or whatever, just because you understand it logically or academically, does not follow that all will be forgiven. Just because we understand rationale doesn't mean we accept or agree to a transgression happening upon you. It does behoove us to recall the fact that we're human, and part of being human is that we are not perfect. When we are as children, we understand that we're still learning. Equally, when we are adults, we must understand that we may still be learning, although supposedly we should be further along the development curve. The human existence has a lot of learning aspects to it. Sometimes how we've developed as children affects patterns and what our current level of understanding is as we get along into adulthood. Someone who is brilliant in the field of physics may still be quite immature in the realm of love, interpersonal relationships. The two rarely have anything in common with one another. And given we are better at some things than at others, we must try to grant more second chances in life wherever possible, depending on the capacity for trusting one another again. We should try to accept that individuals overall are fallible, they're imperfect, they are sometimes rather clumsy, and most capable of behaving like children inhabiting adult bodies. Life and human experience happen along a spectrum. No two people are at the same developmental stages. Sometimes people choose to look at life in a more simplified, dualistic manner. Positive, negative, light, dark, good, bad, perfect, imperfect, suave, or clumsy. But if you look at life as a spectrum on all aspects, I think you'll find and you'll see less of a linear polarity and the personalities of our life are usually, the personalities of our life are usually based in emotion. Yeah. Experience and emotion, in fact, not just emotion, it's both experience and emotion. Emotions are the paintbrushes that we use to create the portraits of our experiences we see along the way. Those portraits of expression relate our vivid experience of things. Our emotional portraits, which are our feelings, and they're usually only snapshots of moments in time which we're trying to interpret or comprehend at that moment, I believe. And as you can imagine, artists don't usually paint only one portrait in their life. There's always the next one. The next one usually is about a revised impression or a newer topic, newer expression. But I believe our human condition always allows us to draw newer portraits, newer expressions as we age and hopefully progress. It allows us to look at things in newer or new ways, alternate ways, with newer perspectives than when we were younger. Those portraits are usually based on momentary perspective, but we as human beings always look at things from new and different perspectives. That's our gift. We're flexible in our thinking, in our observation, hopefully. Our perspectives will, unfortunately, be limited by our current awareness and sometimes our current imagination. The totality of our perspective is quite elusive, can change over our lifespan. As philosophers and scientists agree, the only constant in this universe is change. Existence is change. We start off born, we end up dead. But possibly our perspective is not the only perspective in this galaxy, this galactic creation. We experience life through our own body. But that doesn't mean there aren't other experiences. Maybe not even human. Could be extraterrestrial experience. One day we'll find out. And what is more actually curious and mind-blowing is what kind of perspectives can exist. Even ones that we are not academically capable of comprehending for ourselves with this body, this mind, this intelligence, this intellect, at any exact moment. And that's across our lifetime. We think differently as younger folks and we think differently as older folks. So it makes you question how perspectives can vary from person to person over time, that kind of thing. Can we think out of the box? Can we think out of our existence? Can we think out of our limitations? The ones we put on ourselves. Maybe the ones that are physically imposed on us by Mother Nature. Maybe our current physical or emotional circumstances. Can we think outside of our current hurts or current traumas? Can we think into someone else's perspective or someone else's expression and accept that as valid along with ours? Again, not so much for comprehension, not just so much as to forgive, but more to see what that other person is operating out of. We're at different places in our life, different stages of development. It may be a position or a mindset that you use to subscribe to at one time. Their perspective might even be a position that you subscribe to at one point in time, but no longer. You're along a different path, a different, not level, but a different stage of human development than that other person who's betrayed your trust. Does it obligate you to be more forgiving if you've gone through something and you see it happening in them to you? Does it obligate you to be more forgiving, given you understand? Is it forgiveness out of developmental compassion? Does it obligate you to maybe offer assistance, some counseling, to that other person who is now at the same position you were once in? And if you can see that we are all the same, yet experiencing things at different timelines, different time points, and possibly with different perspectives, then to what degree do you owe sharing wisdom or compassion? And I guess ultimately it's going to be based on whether you can still feel trust for that person that wronged you. Do you trust being vulnerable enough with them, in front of them, to actually share that wisdom or compassion? Are they meriting your vulnerability? Are they meriting your trust, retrust? So we seem to be on the same mission in life, the same existence, the same learning type curves. Usually, the thing that separates us is the extent of our emotion, the extent of our expression, and the valuing of those two vivid feelings. Valuing of it by you, the valuing of it by the other person. Those feelings. I think it's worth dissecting the extent of our emotion. How much someone exerts feeling about a certain situation may colorize their perspective. Emotion makes things more vivid and maybe more real to us than anyone else, anything else. It prioritizes your importance. It prioritizes your focus. It prioritizes your morality and your perspectives, perhaps. So, given that we all love simplicity and the uncomplicated, we tend to push everything else out to the edges and focus on that which we deem emotionally important, more important than other things. So things get emotionally prioritized. All the while forgetting that there's myriad other things that are just as important for a good perspective. Distraction is created and thus must be uncreated at some point if you're to progress in life in your perspective building overall. It seems that successful progression should include an overall balance of emotion, a balance of perspective. Otherwise, there can be no real forward movement, especially when you're fixating on a current vivid emotion, a current portrait, a current perspective. So where does trust come into play in all of this? Trust of self, trust of another. Given we're all supposed to be one, all inside of God, all of the same body, of the same elements, the same electrons, the same energies, sometimes it serves our ego to believe that we are separate from one another, distinct from one another's choices, even though we know we may be guilty of the same transgressions just years before. We are the same body, but sometimes we do make different choices, sometimes different priorities, sometimes different portraits. Ego allows us to introduce a judgment of choices, judgment of our simplifications, forgetting that we're all made of the same materials and all on the same spectrum of learning. And forgetting that we have all learned within those very same spectrums of learning, and yet forgave ourselves, perhaps. Maybe haven't forgiven ourselves. And maybe we can't forgive others for what has happened, what transgression has happened. And that's another tangent of forgiveness and trust. Sometimes we hold others, or even ourselves, to such high standards that we forget we're all children on a learning curve. There's an old adage that when you know better, you do better. And you can actually know better. I kind of repeated myself there. We should certainly expect better of each other over time. The repeating of mistakes is a conscious choice. Now, remember, you cannot learn if you do not make any mistakes. One is an antecedent to the other. It's a pure principle, and how many times do you want to repeat a certain mistake? Hopefully it's just the once, and you redeem yourself. Mistakes should be transitory. So on the concept of trust implies the choices or the judgment are based on experience, inexperience, on learning, level of development, level of learning. And knowing better happens on the second time around. Trust means you haven't forgotten what has happened in the past, but that you expect that there should be different outcomes each time. Trust realizes that there is some imperfection to life. Trust sometimes allows for creativity, for adaptation, and for recompense, and restitution. Restitution, if only of one's faith and not so much of a material restitution. Judgment can lead to an empathy or lead to an impasse. Judgment may not allow or permit progress or any second chances. Trust may follow an alternate judgment, flexible judgment, optimistic judgment, where good faith or change is shown, not just spoken of, but actually shown. And I think we have to accept that change doesn't always allow for restoration. Time and experience eventually change us all. Yesterday was yesterday, today is today. Some broken eggs can't be unbroken. And sometimes that's okay. We just need to accept it and move on. We should take responsibility for some of our actions and accept that ignorance or inexperience is sometimes the cause of disappointment. The element of trust is occasionally earned, but not assured with any second chance. Have we learned anything? Have we expressed anything different? Have we demonstrated awareness, demonstrated good faith? We have to be able to assess our current capabilities and our limitations in our future. Not just to excuse what we have done, but to prioritize making changes. Again, coming back to forgiveness and trust, sometimes these are both limited by emotion, limited by attachment to any perspective or emotional expression. Are you capable of, or are you willing to accept that there is more than any one way of looking at something? Just possessing a strong emotion on one thing doesn't mean you're 100% right. Overwhelming emotion doesn't mean that something is even more true. Your reaction doesn't always reflect reality. Not all the time, not in every case, and not over your changing lifetime, life stages. Reality is usually quite larger than our imagination. We can only approximate a fraction of reality at best. Time and your lifespan allow for even larger fractions of that reality. But remember, it's still only a fraction. So I think the bottom line, or even the moral of the story here, is that we cannot know the entirety of our reality, or the entirety of someone's transgression, the entirety of perception in general, the entirety of expressions at large, the entirety of what we think or can alternately think over our lifetime. Similarly, we can't conceive of what other people conceive of theoretically over their lifetime or their developmental stages. Perspectives change within a person. They change across people. We're only ever capable of a fraction of perspective or reality. And the bottom line is that we find balance, I think, with any perspective. That we should find balance. We should find balance in our emotion. We should find balance in the fraction of reality that we're aware of. And just to keep objectivity. Objectivity can literally fill in the remainder of that fraction of the unknown. So hopefully my little perspective here that I'm bringing up plants a little seed in your mind, just as much as it did for my mind. Always stay curious. Always shoot for balance in life. Stay positive and be nice to one another. Remember, we are all the same. The extent of the sameness is a theoretical, perhaps a spiritual conversation you could have with yourself one day. Especially one where do you leave off and where does someone else begin by definition, your definition? That might subjectively change for you over the course of your life, whatever stage you're in, younger, old, middle age, older age. Be open to new perspectives and consider compassion and trust as you go along. Accept that people are different beings at different stages, but judge their ability to change, to redeem themselves and your relationship or not. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and happy holidays. Thanks for listening.